Was it your impression that this was the first time he'd ever smoked crack?
No, no. You don't, first of all, you don't buy crack, get in a limo, and have a pipe in your pocket if it's the first time you smoke crack.
Yeah.
You just don't.
That makes sense. So I've read about your story to the extent it's been written about, not very much. But I'd never read that Donald Young, this man Donald Young, called you and told you that he knew you'd had sex with Barack Obama.
That was the contact in late 2007 that I had that originally came under the guise that they were part of the Obama campaign.
So who was Donald Young?
Donald Young is a choir director and a school teacher. He was the choir director at Jeremiah Wright's church in Chicago, the same church that Barack Obama went to. He was also a very openly gay black man, but very well respected.
Did you know him?
I had never met him. I had not even realized that the person who was communicating with me had been killed until a good 2 months after.
So I'm going to get to that. So Donald Young is the choir director at Jeremiah Wright's church.
Yes.
And is it publicly confirmed that he knew Barack Obama?
Oh, yes. Yes. Donald Young's own mother has repeatedly said that she feels that her son died to protect Barack Obama.
It's just interesting that Donald Young would have called you. He's not working directly for the campaign that we know of.
Exactly.
But somehow he has a copy of your letter. It sounds like maybe Donald Young was on cleanup duty.
Somehow he has my phone number. Exactly. And that's exactly what it was. Because like I said, the first calls were, I was led to believe that he was with the campaign. The last conversation that I'd had with Donald Young, he had actually come clean and said that he had been asked to call me and that his job was to get as much information from me as far as who I had spoken to, who I had given any information to, and to get that to them. He had told me to be careful, to watch myself, and to understand that the Barack Obama campaign was not in any way, shape, or form going to acknowledge anything or come out about anything. And he had made it clear that he had known Barack for quite some time and had had an intimate relationship with Barack for quite some time.
He told you that?
Yep. And that's when I knew that I could at least trust what I was being told. Originally, I had made it clear I didn't feel comfortable with the phone call because something just didn't seem right. But after a couple of calls, it started to all fall into place. And I had said the same thing to myself.
Wait, so you didn't know Donald Young existed?
Nope.
It sounds like you're not very political anyway. You weren't.
I wasn't at the time.
And you were just annoyed that Obama was talking about cocaine and lying about it.
I was extremely annoyed.
But the sex part had nothing to do with it.
No.
Then Donald Young, who you don't know, never heard of, calls up and says, by the way, I know you had sex with Barack Obama. I did too.
Yep. Pretty much.
I mean, this is a longer conversation, which we're going to have in a minute, but I mean, Obama has a wife and kids, and he's telling America what a great family man he is. Is that, maybe you've seen this a lot? What do you think of that?
Well, you know, in 2008, I made it clear that Obama was having marital problems in '99, and everybody in the world said that I was crazy, didn't know what I was talking about. And yet, what was it, 6 months ago, Barack Obama comes out and tells the world that exactly what I said was the truth. In 1999, he and Michelle came very close to divorce. Really. 15 years later, what I say is the truth, but 15 years earlier, I'm a liar and a fraud. It's interesting how things eventually come out. But yes, believe me, I've known guys that were completely happily married that will screw around with another man on a weekly basis and think nothing of it.
Huh. Is it your sense that that's who Obama is, just transactional, or that he's bisexual, or like, what is this?
No, my feeling that Barack Obama is probably, he's definitely bi. I think there is a lot of transactional qualities to him, because I think whatever he does, it is looking for a hook or looking for a benefit.
Yeah. That's consistent with his public persona too, I would say. So Donald Young calls you. You actually end up. Sounds like you kind of like and trust Donald Young.
I did.
Did he say how long he'd had a relationship with?
He had just said that they had been intimate for years.
Intimate for years. And what happened to Donald Young?
Donald Young was shot dead in his apartment, second floor in Chicago, Illinois. I think it was December 23rd of 2007. According to the police report and the death certificate, multiple gunshot wounds, close range, no forced entry, second floor apartment, yet not a single resident in the building heard a single shot, but yet they can hear every shot that's fired in the street outside. Jeremiah Wright announces that Donald Young's dead earlier that morning, even before it was announced, even before he was declared dead. I mean, a lot of it just didn't make sense.
This is all public, and you can
Yep.
look this up, and it's still on the internet. Tell us about Donald Young's mother.
Norma Jean Young actually is a former Chicago Police Department employee.
Really?
Really. She had worked for the Chicago PD. I had spoken with his sister Lorraine shortly after I realized that he was the gentleman that I had been speaking with. There were people at the time that were attempting to have Lorraine and other members of Donald's family file criminal complaints against me with Chicago because they wanted me arrested. They were trying to get the family to say that I was trying to con them or something. To my knowledge, they never did any such thing. But at the same time, I continue to respect Lorraine and the rest of the family. But Mrs. Young had finally come out and told David Nelson, who was a reporter that I knew out of Minnesota, that she was convinced that Donald had been killed, that his death was to protect his friend Obama. And she confirmed that they had, in fact, been extremely close for years.
I mean, did she confirm that they'd had sex, Obama and Donald Young?
Her confirmation wasn't referencing, or she did not specifically say that they were sexually involved. She just simply said that they had been intimate friends for years.
But she believed the Obama campaign was responsible.
She believed that his death was due to protecting Barack Obama. And I made the same argument that people said, well, how are you accusing Barack? I said, I'm not accusing Barack of anything. But I said, I'm willing to bet my life that Barack Obama and Jeremiah Wright both know or have knowledge of who killed Donald Young. There is no doubt in my mind about that.
Well, this was a guy who was clearly going to be the next leader of the world. You know, people kill each other over insurance claims, over bar fights. You know, there's a lot at stake here. I have no knowledge of this. I'm not alleging a murder by the Obama campaign or its allies, but it's not. It's not a crazy thing to wonder, obviously.
No, and the only thing after I realized what had happened with Donald Young, the only thing I had ever asked was the same thing that I had done. And I said, you know, if you want to accuse me of being crazy, you know, release your phone records. You know, turn over your phone records from your phone in '99. Turn over your phone records for the last year. I mean, it's that easy. If you've got nothing to hide, it's not like they're going to be made public. Turn them over to authorities. Let them investigate. Let them look. But no.
So now seems like a fair time to ask about your motive. So your initial motive was you were annoyed because you believed or you knew that Obama was lying about his drug use.
Right.
But then after the Donald Young exchange, where he brings up the sex that you had with Obama, what was the point at which you decided, I'm just going to bring this to the country? I'm going to go public.
Well, in January of 2008, after having contacted the campaign yet again, I had decided, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to make a YouTube video and put it up, which I did. It wasn't because I was looking for anything out of it. In fact, if I had even stopped long enough to anticipate the blowback and the consequences of speaking out, me being me, it probably would not have stopped me. It might have slowed me a little bit, but it would not have stopped me. But I figured if you're going to call him out, you can't call him out on part of it. And people said, well, why didn't you just talk about the drug use and leave the sex out? And I said, because if I said he just used drugs and then you found out later it was drugs and sex, you would accuse me of lying because I didn't mention the sex. So my opinion was, if you're going to tell the story, then you tell the whole story and let the chips fall where they may. So that's exactly what I did.
And so you made a YouTube video. By the way, I looked for it last night. I couldn't find it.
That's because YouTube gave access to my account to someone shortly after the polygraph test. And I was never given access back to it before the video was actually deleted.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. YouTube gave access to the account and the video was deleted. Microsoft gave access to my Hotmail account and all of my emails were circulating the internet, and vacation replies were set up on my email telling people that I was busy giving blowjobs and would get back with them when I was done. And oh, yeah.
Man, they wanted Obama to be president.
Yep, and they wanted me to be the biggest fraud and nutcase that ever existed.
So I got to ask you, I mean, I wasn't there. I can only assess what you're saying. I don't see any obvious motive for you for gain, financial gain. You're not going to get rich doing this. And in fact, you haven't. You've gotten impoverished as a result of it. But like, if I'm a reporter, well, I was a reporter at the time. I remember thinking, well, that's an interesting story. But it seemed like nobody in the media wanted to follow up with you. And some people, like Ben Smith at Politico, who's a liar and a shill posing as a journalist, I reread the piece last night that he wrote saying, oh, it's ridiculous. Right off the first graph, it's ridiculous, these claims.
Well, I think I have an answer for why a lot of reporters did not want to follow up. And I think it would have something to do with what David Axelrod told a old Chicago Sun-Times reporter, or no, a Chicago Tribune reporter, John Crutzen.
Axelrod had been a reporter in Chicago before he went into politics.
Well, John Crutzen worked for the Chicago Tribune. And John Crutzen actually came to Duluth, Minnesota and sat down with me and talked with me. And John Crutzen had told me point blank that before he had flown out, that he had spoken to Axelrod, and that Axelrod had told him that they were aware of who I was, and that it was their intentions to destroy me, and that if any reporter had mentioned me to them, they would be completely cut off, and that outlet would be completely cut off from access to the Obama campaign for the duration of the year. So I think that had a lot to do with why reporters didn't bring things up to the campaign, because everybody wanted access to, the new savior. Nobody wanted to be blackballed and denied access to a historic campaign.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's the guy's running for president and credible information comes out that he's smoking crack and having sex with dudes, I mean, that seems like a story.
Well, it would be a story if the media really cared about telling people the truth about anything.
Yeah, they're liars. And that Ben Smith is a liar.
Oh, Ben Smith's more than a liar, but you're right.
What do you mean more than a liar?
He's a complete fraud. Ben Smith, I hear people talking about grifters. Ben Smith to me is a grifter. Ben Smith wrote an article saying that I had a 27-year
Criminal history.
Career criminal. And the funny thing is if you look my criminal history up, which I've published myself and provided from day one, my criminal history goes from 1980 to 1986. And everything I've ever done, I've owned it. I've never wasted taxpayer money. And any sentence I've ever been given, I've served. But he also said that I was a fugitive, that I was avoiding prosecution, I was trying to prevent from going to jail. None of that was true. But the media ran with it. Even Greta linked to it and said that people asked me why I would not interview Larry Sinclair. This is why. And she linked to Ben Smith's article. And notice his article was published right when I was preparing to do the press conference at the National Press Club. But hey, the National Press Club, so-called beacon for freedom of the press, they were just as involved in trying to keep the story from ever being.
It's interesting. I watched the other night, I watched your entire National Press Club appearance, and in it, you detail your intersections with law enforcement exhaustively.
Yep.
Every time you've been arrested, you explain it. Every time you've done time, you explain it. So you didn't, from what I could tell, hide your past.
No, why? You can't. I mean, I've never hidden my past in regular everyday life. Why would I hide it in something like this?
So, I mean, you're the only person on this set who's had sex with Barack Obama. So I think you're, I don't know, expert on Obama, but you know more than most people. What's your assessment of him now?
I think he's the same grifter that he's always been. I think he's still very power hungry. I think Obama is calling the shots in the current Biden administration more than people are willing to admit. I think Obama is hell-bent. I had made a statement during that press conference that I felt that Barack Obama being elected was going to push race relations in this country backwards 50 years. I am absolutely positive I was.
Yes, I think you've been vindicated on that.
Because race relations in this country has not only gotten pushed back, but everything's about race now. Everything is about victimization now.
It's interesting though. Yeah, he's obviously a race hater, very anti-white, but he had sex with a white man. So you have to ask, like, is that real?
Oh, for him, of course. I would be willing to bet you I'm not the only white person he's ever had sex with, or male anyway.
Yeah.
But hey, he's got what he wanted. You know, he is in D.C. He's living the life. He's still looked upon as being the savior of the country. You know, and sadly, people are still giving him that power. And I think it's going eventually to be to the detriment of.
Can I just ask you one last question? How did you? I'm just thinking about it. It's very insightful because I knew a lot of people who weren't liberal who voted for Obama purely on the race question, and they weren't all self-hating, guilty whites. They were like nice, normal people who wanted to see race relations improve, and that really was the core promise of his campaign. And a lot of people bought it. A lot of smart people bought it, and I saw why they bought it. But you didn't buy it. How did you know that?
I grew up in South Carolina in the 1960s and 70s, okay? I've been gay and knew I was gay since 6 years old. Never hid it, okay?
Yeah.
I grew up in rural South Carolina. And my first job as a kid was cropping tobacco for a family by the name of Rose that were a black family living across the road from my grandparents. So I grew up as a kid, a gay kid, in an era and an area that would get you killed being gay just as quick as you could be hanging being black. So I actually knew the other side of the track before I knew that I was supposed to act like I was above this or above that. I've watched it my whole life. I know when someone plays, when it comes to acting like they're one way and then in reality they're the biggest racists or bigots alive on both sides. Okay. I knew because he was saying one thing in the campaign, and then if people started to actually listen to what he was saying, remember there was a time when he actually told supporters to show up at a fight with a knife, get in people's face, argue with them if they didn't agree to support him, if they didn't agree to vote for him, argue with them, convince them. Come on. You don't make statements like that and tell me that you're not going to make things about race. He did.
Man, that is the one part of your story that we can say unequivocally you're telling the truth about. You saw that, and most people didn't. Larry Sinclair, I'm really grateful that you came. I wish I had interviewed you in 2008. I don't think anyone would have run the interview. But anyway, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very much.
Thank you.
Great to meet you.
You too.